Alrighty, we're in 2 Kings chapter number 9. And we've seen a lot of things happening over the past few weeks, and a lot of things that God has been doing by the hand of Elisha, and a lot of different kings that we've looked at, and we're going to see some more of these go away because of death. But beginning in chapter 9, we're going to see a new king over Israel. So even though he is one that doesn't mind, he doesn't mind taking the lives of other people, he still was better at serving God than the rest of them. Even though he wasn't totally in line with God with everything, but he was probably known as one of the bloodiest kings. But it was because of things that, you know, were laid out before him that had to be done. So, but we'll get into that. Beginning in verse 1, chapter 9, and Elisha the prophet called one of the children of the prophets and said unto him, Gird up thy loins, and take this box of oil in thine hand, and go to Ramoth Gilead. Now, you know, this seems like, you know, he's calling on one of the younger prophets to go and do something, but it seems like, and we'll see what he's talking about, it seems like what he's calling on one of these fellas to do would be something that he would actually do. But he called on a younger prophet, told him to gird up his loins and take a box of oil and to go to a certain city, Ramoth Gilead. And when he says, and when thou comest thither, look out there Jehu, the son of Jehoshaphat, the son of Nimshi, and go in, and make him arise up from among the brethren, and carry him to an inner chamber. So, you know, we've already got a king of Israel. But, you know, here, Joram, you know, in the last battle, he was wounded, and he went to a city, and he was, you know, he was staying there trying to get the wounds to heal. But, you know, besides that, you know, we're about to see some other things take place with other kings. So, but he told him to go and find Jehu, the son of Jehoshaphat, who was the son of Nimshi. Call him off to the side and take him into a spot, an inner chamber somewhere separate from everybody else. He says, then take the box of oil and pour it on his head and say, Thus saith the Lord, I have anointed thee king over Israel. Then open the door and flee and tarry not. You know, he's telling, and you know, when the first king was anointed, Samuel, who was the prophet then, anointed him. And when God was done with him, because he wouldn't do what God wanted, he didn't do what he promised to follow all the things of God. You know, God took his blessing away from him, his spirit away from him, and he placed it on David. And who went and anointed David? Samuel. But now Elisha, instead of him going to anoint the new king of Israel, he sends kind of like a apprentice prophet. He was a younger person to go and pour the oil on his head and anoint him and tell him that God had anointed him king over Israel. But then he tells this young prophet, when you do that, you get out the door and get gone, because you know your life is going to be in danger. So because the other king was not dead. So So the young man, even the young man, the prophet, went to Ramoth Gilead. And when he came, behold, the captains of the host were sitting. And he said, I have an errand to thee, O captain. And Jehu said, unto which of all us? And he said, to thee, O captain. And he arose and went into the house, and he poured the oil on his head, and said unto him, thus saith the Lord God of Israel, I have anointed thee king over the people of the Lord, even over Israel. So, this man, I don't know if he even knew what was about to take place. Obviously he didn't. What do you want? Which one of us do you want to see? And this young prophet says, I need to see you, Jehu. He carries him into the house, and he opens the box, he pours the oil on his head, and he tells him, God has appointed you as the new king of Israel. So, and then he shares, and thou shalt smite the house of Ahab thy master. And now, I was wrong earlier. Joram was the king of Judah, and Ahab is through his lineage was the king of Israel, because Ahab was married to Jezebel. So God's anointing Jehu over Israel because he's wanting Jehu to fulfill. He's going to fulfill prophecy that's already been shared by Elijah. So, and Elisha has shared with this young man what to share with him so that, we can get all this taken care of. But it's prophecy that's going to be fulfilled here. He arose and went into the house. He poured the oil over him. He says, and thou shalt smite the house of Ahab thy master, that I may avenge the blood of my servants, the prophets, and the blood of all the servants of the Lord at the hand of Jezebel. For the whole house of Ahab shall perish, and I will cut off from Ahab him that pisseth against the wall, and him that is shut up and left in Israel. And, these are things that was prophesied earlier by Elijah. Elijah's already gone. He was taken up, chariot of fire in a whirlwind, gone. Elisha was anointed the new prophet, and now some of the things that Elijah had prophesied is coming to pass. God had shared, because of the things that Ahab and Jezebel had done, that Ahab's lineage wouldn't go any further than his children. That was it. They were all going to die. And that's what he means by that he would cut off from Ahab him that pisseth against the wall. In other words, any men, children, boy, children, all of them were going to die. There was not going to be a lineage left to Ahab because of what he was doing. He was allowing, when he was king, he allowed Jezebel to really guide him. And Jezebel was one that he should not have married to start with, because God had told them not to intermarry with those people of the world, the Gentiles.
So God figured Jehu was the right man for the job that would take
care of this prophecy.
What he wanted done and everything.
Right. Whatever he laid out for Jehu to do, he would do it. And then he would do it. And he's going to become known as really a bloody king. Because he's going to take care of these things. And that's his lot, and that's what purpose God had for him being king. So, but I'm sure God had other purposes, but that's is part of the purposes of God, was that his word be fulfilled. And it all will be at one point. So, but he shared that the whole house of Ahab would be cut off. And he says, and I will make the house of Ahab like the house of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, and like the house of Baasha, the son of Ahijah. And if you remember, when we studied about Jeroboam and Baasha, the same thing was said about them, that the children those that pisseth against the wall, and I mean, I hate to say that, but that's what the scripture said, would be cut off. In other words, all the men, children, that's it. They're not progressing. Their lineage was cut off because they did things that was contrary to what God told them to do. And the same thing happens with Ahab, so, and his lineage. But, you know, God had shared through Elijah what would take place. And here's one of the things that he shared. And the dogs shall eat Jezebel in the portion of Jezreel, and there shall be none to bury her. And he opened the door and fled. So, you know, he's sharing with Jehu, you know, really what's going to take place in part of his kingship. You're going to be the reason that this prophecy is fulfilled. Jezebel's going to die, and you know there'll be none that will bury her. Dogs are going to eat her flesh. You know, that's bad. You know,
They devoured everything.
yeah. Then Jehu came forth to the servants of his Lord, and one said unto him, Is all well? Wherefore came this mad fellow to thee? And he said unto them, You know the man and his communications. So you know who this was and what message he had. This was a prophet, and the message he had was from God. And they said, It is false. Tell us now. And he said, Thus and thus spake he to me, saying, Thus saith the Lord, I have anointed thee king over Israel. So, you know, he begins to share with them, you know what? I'm the new king. The old king, he's laying up here trying to recuperate, and, you know, he is not, he doesn't know that the kingdom's been taken from him. So, but he shares with them that he'd been anointed king over Israel. Then they hasted and took every man his garment and put it under him on the top of the stairs and blew the trumpet, saying, Jehu is king. So they began to set him up as the king. And when they blew the trumpets, you know, folks knew that there was a change. Folks knew that you know, there's a change that has come in the kingship because of these trumpets being blown. So, you know, there's some trumpets going to blow here before too long. Don't know when, but God knows when. And Jesus is coming. And it's going to be a change. Lord have mercy. So folks better get ready. So Jehu, the son of Jehoshaphat, the son of Nimshi, conspired against Joram. Now Joram had kept Ramoth Gilead, he and all Israel, because of Hazael, king of Syria. But King Joram was returned to be healed in Jezreel of the wounds which the Syrians had given him when he fought with Hazael, king of Syria. And Jehu said, If it be your minds, then let none go forth, nor escape out of the city to go tell it in Jezreel. So, you know, Jehu's ready. He's ready to go do what's laid out before him. To take care of this prophecy, to take care of what God had shared with him to do. So Jehu rode in a chariot and went to Jezreel. For Joram lay there, and Ahaziah, king of Judah, was come down to see Joram. And there stood a watchman on the tower in Jezreel, and he spied the company of Jehu as he came, and said, I see a company. And Joram said, Take an horseman and send to meet them, and let him say, Is it peace? So, you know, and in all of these walled cities, they had learned that they needed watchmen on the walls. They needed watchmen in the towers. And, he's watching, they see dust coming. Hey, there's somebody coming. They're coming
Right.
awful fast.
They thought Jehu was fixing to attack them, huh?
Yep. They're coming mighty fast. So he sends out a horseman, just go out and see if he's coming in peace. Is everything okay? And we're going to read here in a minute, but they knew that Jehu, he liked to travel in a hurry. He's like the fella in the car with a heavy foot, can't get his foot out of the carburetor. Jehu was that way on a chariot. They knew that, when he goes, he's coming now. So, but they wanted to know, is it peace? So there went one on horseback to meet him, and said, Thus saith the king, is it peace? And Jehu said, What hast thou to do with peace? Turn thee behind me. And the watchman told, saying, The messenger came to them, but he cometh not again. Jehu, when the messenger gets there, you coming in peace? Jehu says, you better get in line with me. And that's what the watchman, or the horseman does. He gets in line with him. The watchman's waiting and looking, and he doesn't see anybody else coming by themselves. So he tells the king, hey, the rider went out here, but he's not returning by himself right yet. So
They don't know where they smoked him or
right.
what they done.
But Jehu gave him opportunity to turn himself over to him and become a part, really, of his army, a part of what was coming to battle. So, but then the Bible says in verse 19, Then he sent out a second on horseback, which came to them and said, Thus saith the king, is it peace? And Jehu answered, What hast thou to do with peace? Turn thee behind me. So now the second horseman, Jehu tells him, really, I'm not coming in peace. You better get in line with me. And so he gets in line with him. He lines up with the folks that are with Jehu. He gives him opportunity. Now, this afternoon, as I was rereading over this, I was thinking, what would have happened if these two horsemen hadn't got in line with him? They probably would have taken their lives. They wouldn't have let him try to escape and get back to the, hey, he's not coming in peace. So, but the watchman told, saying, He came even unto them, and come not again. And the driving is like the driving of Jehu, the son of Nimshi, for he driveth furiously. So see, they know Jehu. They know he's one that when he goes, just as fast as it'll go, he's going. There's a lot of people that's exactly the way they drive their vehicles. They're not going unless they can drive just as fast as they can get by with. Or really, sometimes they're driving faster than they should be. But they want to drive just fast as they can, get somewhere just quick as they can. That's Jehu. So, he is known as a fast driver. And Joram said, Make ready. And his chariot was made ready. And Joram, king of Israel, and Ahaziah, king of Judah, went out, each in his chariot, and they went out against Jehu, and met him in the portion of Naboth the Jezreelite. And it came to pass, when Joram saw Jehu, that he said, Is it peace, Jehu? And he answered, What peace, so long as the whoredoms of thy mother Jezebel and her witchcraft are so many? So, he's telling him because of your mom and daddy, you're dead. How could there be peace with all the evil that they've done? There's not. Joram turned his hands and fled, and said to Hazael, there is treachery, O Hazael. So here is, he says somebody's committing treason. But God had already given the kingdom to Jehu. This king didn't know it. So, he's saying there's treason. And Jehu drew a bow with his full strength and smote Jehoram between his arms, and the arrow went out at his heart, and he sunk down in his chariot. So he killed him. And here, you notice they call him Jehoram. Joram and Jehoram are the same names. They're used interchangeably in Scripture. But it's the same person. It's not a different person. So, he kills him. He sinks down in his chariot. So then said Jehu to Bidkar his captain, take up and cast him in the portion of the field of Naboth the Jezreelite. For remember how that when I and thou rode together after Ahab his father, the Lord laid this burden upon him. Surely I have seen yesterday the blood of Naboth and the blood of his son, saith the Lord, and I will requite thee in this plat, saith the Lord. Now therefore take and cast him into that plat of ground according to the word of the Lord. Now, if you remember, Naboth was the one that owned the property next to Ahab's palace. He wanted that because he said that'd be a good garden spot. That would be a good place. But Naboth said, I can't sell you this land. This is my inheritance. So Jezebel devised a way that they got Naboth killed, and when he was dead, she said, now Ahab, you're the king, take that property. And that's what he did. So God had shared, when these people die, they're going to be buried in this field. Or either just cast into this field, but hopefully they buried them. But, in some cases they didn't. And we're going to see that, Jezebel's not going to be buried. But it is because of the shedding of this innocent blood. The blood of Naboth was innocent blood that they had shed just so they could take that property. Just because Ahab whimpered and whined, if you remember, he wouldn't eat. He wouldn't do nothing because Naboth wouldn't sell him the land, and he laid there like a little crybaby, and she come in there and tried to comfort him and said, hey, you know what, you're the king. And so she devised the way. She came up with the plan, a way to get Naboth killed. And he died, and then she comes to her husband. Hey, he's dead. Take that property. You're the king. That innocent blood was shed. It's sad. And I think about, Brother Billy asked prayer for the folks up there in New York. And, this fella driving that truck, he went and rented a truck from Home Depot. And, just plowed down this bicycle lane, walking lane, whatever. And killed innocent people. That's sad. There was maybe 8 killed and 13 injured, I believe is what it was. But, it's sad.
I didn't know Home Depot rented trucks.
In some areas they do.
Yeah.
But it was...
I thought they said that other company.
They had...
It had Home Depot on
yeah,
the
on the truck it had Home Depot on the side of it.
Yeah.
So, and they said he had rented the truck from them. So. But, it's sad that these folks want to come into our country. And, I heard our president talking today that
said, we've got to quit being so politically correct and stop these people from coming in this country. You know, I mean, I know we're a country of immigrants, but you got not only them, but there's a lot of other innocent people that's been killed because we allow anybody and everybody to come into this country. And I just have to agree with him. Those countries that he named off, we should not allow people to come in here from those countries. It's just that simple.
Well, you know, all the way from the 1900s or even before they come into New York here, I don't know about any other place, they had to go through Rikers Island and they had to fill out a whole bunch of paperwork before they could enter. They don't have to do that now.
Yeah, it's not that closely, it's not as closely monitored and checked. So I think we need to get back to, hey, you know what, where are you from? You know, and it's sad to say, if you're of the Islamic faith, sorry. You know, I mean, and that's sad, but that's what we're gonna have to do.
It's bad to know they just let them go and come if it's peace.
Peace.
Yeah.
Yeah, they was from Pakistan, they said.
But you know, just all this innocent blood. And, you know, now they're paying the price for that innocent blood that's been taken. You know, these folks that blow themselves up in crowds and kill themselves along with killing a lot of others, you know, they've been taught that they're going to go to heaven and have 70 virgins there waiting on. You know, they got a rude awakening. You know, they're going to lift their eyes in hell. They're not going to be in a place of lavish luxury, and they're going to be in a terrible place of torment. But, you know, these things that are taking place, these are things that had been prophesied by Elijah because of what had been done. It says, but when Ahaziah, the king of Judah, saw this, he fled by the way of the garden house, and Jehu followed after him, and said, smite him also in the chariot. And they did so at the going up to Gur, which is by Ibleam, and he fled to Megiddo and died there. So, you know, at Ibleam, I believe how it's pronounced, Ibleam, is, you know, he was wounded there, but he was able to make it to Megiddo. And when he got there, that's where he died. He died of his wounds. And his servants carried him in a chariot to Jerusalem and buried him in his sepulchre with his fathers in the city of David. And in the 8th year of Joram, the son of Ahab, began Ahaziah to reign over Judah. So, you know, we're doing away with all of Ahab's offspring. You know, not, hey, we've already read where that any of the men children would not make it. They would not have any boy children that would live. They would be cut off. So we're seeing that take place. So, and they carried him, they buried him in the city of David, and you know, another fulfillment of prophecy. And when Jehu was come to Jezreel, Jezebel heard of it, and she painted her face and tired her head and looked out a window. You know, Jezebel must have been an awfully beautiful woman. But now, you know, she's gotten a lot older, and, you know, painting her face, putting on all this makeup and all this kind of stuff, fixing up her hair, just getting everything all ready and just decked out, you know, hoping to appeal to whoever. She's looking out the window. And as Jehu entered in at the gate, she said, had Zimri peace, who slew his master? And you know, she's hollering out at Jehu, asking, did Zimri have peace, who slew his master? And he lifted up his face to the window and said, who is on my side? Who? And there looked out to him 2 or 3 eunuchs. So, you know, he's looking up at her, and her servants are around her, and he said, who of you up there is on my side? And 2 or 3 of the eunuchs stepped up and said, hey, we are. You know, they were probably tired of the way they were being treated. They were probably tired of, you know, if they didn't do something just right, being beaten, whatever. They were wicked. So they stepped up and said, we're on your side. And he said, throw her down. In other words, chunk her out the window. She might have beautified herself or tried to, but she's only done that to go sailing out the window. So he says, he lifted up his face to the window and said, who's on my side? And there's 2 or 3 eunuchs. He says, throw her down. So they threw her down, and some of her blood was sprinkled on the wall and on the horses, and he trod her underfoot. So, you know, her blood just splashed everywhere. That's what God had said would happen. Then the horses of Jehu just trampled over her. He didn't care. He wasn't worried about it. That he became known as really a bloody king, even though he's carrying out what God had prophesied. He becomes known as a bloody king. You know, and now look what happens with her. And the horses trod over her. It says, and when he was come in, he did eat and drink and said, go, see now this cursed woman and bury her, for she is a king's daughter. But, you know, Jehu must not have known the whole prophecy. You know, he does, even before he goes about burying her, he goes, hey, you know what, I'm hungry. Let's eat. He gets done eating. He said, y'all go out there and get her body and bury her. You know, she was a king's daughter. The country she came from, her father was the king. So, you know, he says they went to bury her, but they found no more of her than the skull and the feet and the palm of her hands. Man, that's bad. Just long enough for him to eat and get kind of full, and they get back out there, all they find is her feet, her skull. They done gnawed everything off in it. And the palm of her hands. Man, that's bad. But that's what God had said would happen to her, because you know what Jezebel was? She was one that would kill the prophets of God. She wanted to kill Elijah. You know, remember Elijah got afraid of her, went and hid in the cave, and God pretty much asked him, why are you hiding in this cave? Get out of here. I'm the only one left. God says, no, I've got 7,000 down there that hadn't bowed to Baal or nothing else. You're not the only one. So, you know, Elijah had to get his strength up, I guess, his faith up, and he got out of there. But when they went to bury her, that's all they found. Skull, feet, and palm of her hands. Wherefore they came again and told him, and he said, this is the word of the Lord, which he spake by his servant Elijah the Tishbite, saying, in the portion of Jezreel shall dogs eat the flesh of Jezebel. So I guess he did know the prophecy, but he was still going to bury her, if they hadn't done devoured her. Because again, she was, you know, of royalty in the world, so to speak. Her father was a king. So, you know, Jehu didn't want to just disrespect that. But he knew that, maybe he knew that when they got down there, hey, you know, all you're going to find is just a little bit of her. There's not going to be enough to bury. Hey, just let the dogs drag the rest of it off. But he says that's what Elijah shared. That was the prophecy that was shared. And, you know, it was gone. It says, and the carcass of Jezebel shall be as dung upon the face of the field in the portion of Jezreel, so that they shall not say, this is Jezebel. So, you know, there's nothing left but feet, skull, and palms of her hands. I guess they threw it out on the field. But there was no carcass left. There was nothing left that they could say, hey, this is Jezebel. Nothing. Because of, you know what? God will take care of evil in His timing. Now, you know, this went on for quite some time. She's lived quite a long time. If you figure up the years from the time that Ahab, her husband, died, it's probably 15 to 17 years or so that she lived after he died. But, you know, God will take care of evil in His time, and we get in a hurry. Somebody does us wrong, and we know God says, vengeance is mine. You know, we need to let God take care of it. But we want to jump in there and go ahead and help Him take care of it a lot of times. You know, but, and we shouldn't, because it is God's. Just like this person that killed all these innocent people up there in New York. God will take care of that evil. We may not think so. I know we get angry at, you know, it angers me really that, you know, we let such folks in this country.
I think they took care of him when he stepped out of the truck with 2 fake guns.
Yeah. So, you know, but I just, it's aggravating. But I know that God will take care of evil. So, you know, and that's what God was doing here. Just as He had promised. It probably been such a while, she probably thought she had gotten away with it.
Yeah.
But, you know, what God says is going to come to pass. God will take care of it in His timing. Anybody have anything on any of these verses?